again, we're going to go through about a 20-minute lecture, and then we're going to dive after that into some Q&A if you have any questions on the lecture from today, or as well any of the assignments or other content or the structure of the course. So I'll save a little bit of time at the end. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the content. So we're going to talk today about developing a marketing campaign. This is the agenda that I'm going to go through today. We'll talk about the context of your marketing campaign, about developing a goal, content for the campaign, and thinking about how to develop that content. Then we will look at a timeline and then execution of that campaign, and then talk about evaluation. And then after we go through the structure of it, I'm going to run through a brief example as though we were developing a campaign on our own. So real quick, a definition of a campaign. So as opposed to a marketing plan, which thinks about the sort of broader aspects of how you're developing your marketing and what you're thinking about for marketing your brand, your cidery or distillery or brewery, this campaign is a sort of finite section of that marketing plan. This is where you're going to sort of string together a series of different, whether it's ads or promotions, tastings, that sort of stuff. Maybe you're going to come out with new clothing line that supports a new package or a new beer that you're brewing for the first time. So that's really the idea of this marketing campaign. Again, it's a smaller, cohesive unit of marketing that has a pretty singular goal. So first, I just want to talk about, again, and remind you of the context of a marketing campaign. The idea is that this is something that still fits within your broader marketing plan. You're still thinking about and paying attention to the demographics and psychographics of which you're targeting your production and sales. You're still thinking about the 4 Ps that you talked about and developed early on to think about your brand. Your brand culture should very well show through in everything that you do within this smaller campaign. And you obviously can't break the bank. You don't want to use your entire year's budget on a single campaign unless this campaign is all that you're going to do, which I would not recommend. You really want to think about numerous different smaller campaigns that fit within that overall annual budget. So the first step with a marketing campaign is really to develop a goal. I posted this little acronym, SMART. Any goal within this marketing campaign should be specific, measurable, attainable, reasonable, and timely. Otherwise, you can find a problem of creep where you don't really understand. If you don't have a specific goal, you might add new ideas to the campaign as you get going, so that if you don't have that specific goal, you might be trying to do more than one thing or too much within this campaign. You really want to target one concept or one idea. So some examples are product-based. Like I said, maybe you've got a new liquid that you're trying to promote, or it's an existing liquid, but for the first time you're going to put it in a can or a 22-ounce bottle. On the other hand, you might just have a new idea to gain some sales and visibility for the brand, and so you're going to put together a campaign that will maybe it'll run in a new geographic region, or maybe you feel like your brand visibility is slipping because of some other new competition, and so what you want to do is really get your brand back out there and in the forefront of your customers' minds. That's another reason for a campaign. Or maybe it's time to remind people that you have a killer spring beer, and that's what you're thinking about right now. So it's time to offer a marketing campaign to get people's minds back on the fact that it's spring and it's time to try your new spring beer. So that leads into content. Now that you've got a pretty specific goal in mind, and for the purposes of an example we'll talk about later, but you've got your specific goal. Now it's time to think about what content you're going to develop to promote or to drive your campaign forward. And you can do any number of different promotions. You can do 1 or 2 or a dozen. Just make sure that you're paying attention to that original goal. So if your goal is to increase brand visibility, you very well may have a number of different promotions that you're putting together within this one campaign. Whereas if you're, like I said, releasing a new liquid in a different package type, then you might tone it down and really focus on just a couple or a few of these different ideas. But you're really going to get together with your whole team. You're going to think about what the goal is, what marketing promotions you've offered in the past, and if there's something that's new that you would like to add to your promotion list. This is really the sort of blue sky, the wide open thinking to develop exactly how it is that you're gonna meet your goal going forward. So any of those and numerous more options are on the table. Again, it's wide open. Anything you can think of that'll help get your campaign and move it forward is something that you should consider. So the next thing that you need to think about really is a timeline for your presentation or for your campaign, excuse me. And one thing I really want you to think about is, particularly if you're offering a new liquid or it's some sort of time-based promotion or campaign, if you have a liquid that's coming out for the first time in a new package, and say it's a stout, for instance, I would suggest that a good time to release a stout in a can for the first time might be at the beginning of the fall or leading into winter. And so all of a sudden you have a deadline at which point your campaign really needs to launch. So think about that as your launch date, and then you're gonna want to work backwards with all of the other pieces of the campaign to understand exactly when you need to get started on that campaign in order to have everything done, to have all of your to-dos checked off when it comes time to have that launch date. So some of the things that you might think of in terms of things that are going to drive that timeline, I put up on here. So recipe testing. If this is a new liquid, you should understand exactly how long it's going to take for you to get that liquid going forward. So if you need to do 2 or 3 different batches, starting with a 1-barrel batch and then moving up 10-barrel and then your final full 20-barrel batch, that's going to take 6 weeks if you're doing a 14-day turnaround on each batch, and longer if you're doing a lager, for instance, with a month turnaround. So think about that. How long does your distributor, if you're using a distributor, how much lead time do they need to fill their warehouse and then get all of your packaged goods out to the store, so that if you have a launch date of November 1st, every single grocery store that you want to launch in is fully stocked and ready when it's time to hit go on that major campaign, and when you start releasing promotions and advertising and things like that. TTP can be a major obstacle in terms of having things ready for your campaign. So that's the Tax and Trade Bureau, and they have to approve all new alcohol labels, right? So you can be facing a 6 weeks to 2 months turnaround, and sometimes that's a best case scenario. So factor in all of these different things into your timeline and work backwards to when you really need to start thinking about designing a new label or designing a new ad, or otherwise thinking about the very beginning steps of that campaign. So now that you've got your campaign set, you know exactly what the content's going to be, you know what it is that is going to hold you up and what it is that's going to drive you forward, and you've got all of those pieces in place, and you did all of those things on an appropriate timeline, then it's really time to execute. That's when you have all of your winter cider sitting at the warehouse at the distributor, and then they've moved it on to the grocery stores you hope to sell to. You've got all of your advertising ready to launch. You've got your press releases ready to send out to the appropriate influencers. We'll talk about those folks down the road, of course. But it's go time, and now is when you do a final check on your to-do list, get a good idea of how many things there are left, or if none, then you decide you're ready to go, and you hit send. You know, that's when you launch all of those things. You tell the distributor to start stocking the new product. You put all of those things out there so that it's really time to go. Execution may seem like the easiest thing. That's what we've been driving for with this whole campaign, but it often requires a lot of different things to understand, a lot of moving pieces and a lot of people that are other than you. And so you need to just make sure that everyone involved, from your distributor to your design or marketing team, especially if those are outside contractors that you're working with, now is the time to make sure those people are all ready and everything that you need, all the content, all the clothing is delivered and ready to sell. This is the hard part, and having everything ready to go on the timeline you set out at the beginning can be the hardest part, but once it's all there, it's time to execute. So you hit send, you got all the products delivered and on time, and it hit the grocery store shelves just as you hoped. You launched your Instagram campaign with the catchy hashtag that you've been thinking about for 2 years. Now it's time to evaluate the success of your campaign. This is something that a lot of, especially small companies, find either that they don't have time or don't really know how to do. And I'm going to argue that it's one of the most important things, mainly because you really want to understand how it is that you're going to promote and do the next campaign, right? You want to understand whether focusing on a chain grocery store that has sold your product in the past and you know, having a tasting there when you hit send on that campaign, if that was worth the time and effort. You want to understand if people are buying the new sweatshirt that you put out at the beginning of the fall. Those are the sorts of things that that evaluation makes really critical, and is going to feed further success down the road, especially the next time you offer a campaign, so you don't make the same mistakes, and so that you really think and leverage the success you had the previous opportunity and the previous campaign that you ran. So some of the things that you can think about that's going to help you measure success. And again, this is more difficult for smaller businesses. You don't necessarily have tens of thousands of dollars to pay a marketing company to assess the success of your campaign. But from the beginning, you probably had a sales goal, right? So if you set down that you want to sell 7% more of your winter cider than you did last year at during the same 30 days, then go back to those sales targets and see if you met your target. Elicit customer feedback. You know, talk to the folks that are in your tap room. Maybe post a 2-question survey on your Facebook or Twitter or Instagram page that folks can click through to say, hey, I saw that ad and it did drive me to purchase your new product I might not have otherwise. And then with online analytics, Lisa's going to talk a lot more about that, but there's definitely ways, whether it's looking at how folks found your website, looking at how many people have checked out, who have liked your Facebook page, that sort of stuff. There's some built-in feedback on a lot of those online systems that is going to help you understand whether what you did was working or not. So now we're going to go through a quick example to help solidify what this project looks like, what this campaign process looks like. So to lay it out, we have an existing cidery. We have 3 products in cans right now, and coming up on November 1st, I would like to deliver a 4th product, a new seasonal. This is a winter cider, and I want it to come out, and I want to have a pretty major sales campaign to drive the sales of that product in the new package. So it's an existing liquid. It's never been in a can before, and that's why I want to launch a new campaign. So obviously, the first thing we're going to think about when we go back to where we started is context. So at this point, I am pretty clear on the demographics of my my customer base. I know who I'm trying to sell to. I know who generally buys my product, and I'm going to keep that in mind. I'm going to keep where my brand is in the 4 Ps, and obviously going to think pretty carefully about the brand culture that I'm trying to promote. And I'm not going to deviate from that brand culture and from those 4 Ps. Even though this is a new campaign, it should fit and it should look and feel similar to some of the other things that I've done before, right? We talked about that. You looked at some of that stuff in the audit you did last week. Does the promotion that I'm doing now fit in with the mission and with the culture that I've put together and that folks come to expect when they think about my product? So then the next step is develop a goal. So my goal for this fake campaign is awareness of a new package, and I want to target sales growth of 15% over last year, over the month of November when it wasn't in a package. So that means I was selling it probably in kegs and at my tap room only. So I would like to see a pretty substantial 15% minimum growth in sales of that liquid. So now I'm going to sit down with my team, whether the team is just me and my brewer's assistant, cider assistant, or depending on how many folks I can bring together, you might be contracting out for a designer. Get that person in the room. You really want to get all of the folks that you value their thought process into the room and consider what content, what promotions you're going to put together for this campaign. So for my winter cider, I would like to offer a pretty major social media push. I'm going to do a Facebook and Instagram campaign with a hashtag winter warmer. I'm going to offer a sweatshirt to the top 5 photos that tag that hashtag. I'm going to do an off-premise sales setup. So, I would like to create some marketing that'll sit on an end cap at all of the major chains that I want to sell to, so that they can have a more visible opportunity for my product to get noticed on the shelf. Again, this is a new product, and I really want to make sure that folks understand that, yes, it's existed on-premise before, but this is the first time you can get it at the grocery store in a 16-ounce can, right? I'm going to create a new sweatshirt that's going to go along with this product. It's going to have the nice label that I came up with on it, and maybe a different version without the hashtag of that of the catchy winter warmer phrase. Great time of year to be launching a new hoodie in November 1st is the target date I set. So we're going to think about all of the design on the front end to make sure that I can get the logo off to the screen printer and get those sweatshirts printed and delivered before November 1st, obviously. And then I'm going to do some pretty serious outreach. I'm going to develop a press release that's going to go out to the local newspapers as well as the local beer and cider bloggers, so that they can, I hope, do a little bit of promotion for me. And as well, I'm going to make sure that in the week ahead of my launch date, I'm going to get some actual cider in cans to those folks that might be reviewing it, so that they have a chance to try it ahead of time, and maybe their review will come out at the same time as my launch date, right? So again, outreach, all of that stuff. This is the content that I wanna launch. So up next, I'm gonna start with a timeline. I'm gonna say this is the most important thing. This is going to ensure that I don't get to November 1st and realize that TTB still has not approved my can label, and there's no way that I can deliver that product. So starting with November 1st being my launch date, I'm going to work backwards. So just this was a pretty basic stab at what all of the major steps I need to think about. So label and other design, I'm going to work I'm assuming that I have an in-house designer, so it's going to be just 3 weeks to do a handful of different iterations of that label before I can get it out to a final draft that I think is going to fit both on the can as well as on all of the other marketing and promotion materials I'm going to use. So it's going to be something that will look great on a sweatshirt, on a poster, all of the above. From that point, the next step is getting a final label for the can off to Tax and Trade Bureau. I have in the past, absolutely. I'm gonna put a label together. Sorry, Rebecca asked if I design a label before I test the product. I know that I want to launch a winter cider, and so because the label and the design process takes longer in my imaginary cidery than does the design and delivery, or excuse me, than does the actual production of the cider itself. I'm going to start that process well before, so that by the time it's coming back from TTB, that's about the same time as when I want to start testing testing the liquid itself, doing recipe testing. So again, I've delivered my final label to TTB, and I can set that project aside under the understanding that I hope it comes back well within time to get to the can producer, right? So moving forward on my timeline, I'm going to start that recipe testing. Here it looks like about 6 or 8 weeks before my launch date. So that's right about here. I'm giving myself 5 weeks of recipe testing. So I've got a pretty good idea what I think I want to make. And I know that I can do one barrel batch and then one 10 barrel batch. And at that point, I'm feeling confident that I'll be close enough that by the time it comes to make a full-size 20 barrel batch in my cidery, then that one's going to be good to go, and it'll be ready to go in a can at the end of that next phase here. So also during my recipe testing, I heard back from TTB. They're going to accept my label, and so I'm going to send the label off to the can producers. And I'm assuming a 6-week turnaround on those cans. Again, this is all stuff that you're going to have worked with your can producer. You're going to work with TTB, and maybe the first time you're going to be surprised when it takes 8 weeks. After that, that's going to be the minimum that you put into your potential timeline. So count on 10 weeks. In my case, I've had experience in the past that maybe says 8 weeks is the longest. It's sometimes as short as 4 weeks, and so I'm using 6-week timeline for my processes here. So now I have tested all of my product. I've got a 20 barrel batch in the fermenters, and while it's fermenting there, I'm going to start off with just the hints at my social media campaign, right? So I can start hinting at what that winter warmer process is going to be. Maybe I'll show sneak peeks of what I want the sweatshirt to look like, that sort of thing. So here I have my sweatshirt production. By the time you send it to your designer, you should have at least a mock-up of what that's going to look like, and that can be a part of your sort of testing campaign or social media campaign here. As we get closer to launch date, we're going to start sending out the actual press releases and actual product to those deliveries like I talked about a moment ago, so that when it comes to launch date, so November 1st, when it gets close to that time, everything is ready to go. The reviewers and the bloggers have my product. They understand that it's going to come out with a splash on November 1st. Social media campaign is fully up and running. Distributor has pallets and pallets and pallets of my product that they are sharing out with the grocery stores, bars, all that sort of stuff that I want them to appear in, so that again, come launch date, I know that all that product is sitting in a back room ready to be merchandised out onto the shelves, and everything's a go. So at this point, you can work backwards. So if my launch date was November 1st over here, I believe it was early July was the date that I needed to really get cracking with design to make sure that everything is ready to go for that November 1st date. Yeah, so it looks like July 5th was when I needed to start on the design process. And again, some of these things you're going to find don't actually take as much time. Some of them might take a lot more time. Maybe your sweatshirt producer has a 6-week turnaround time. That's something that you'll put into your Gantt chart differently than what I have here. But really just need to be working backwards from your launch date to understand when it is that you need to start the process of developing these products. So everything is ready to go, and I hit send. I launched the press release. I tell the distributor to merchandise my product, and I have a beer release party at the tap room, or a cider release party at the tap room. Have a little speech, toast a few people that showed up for it, and we're off and running. So now we fast forward another month, 2 months, and now's when we start thinking about evaluation. So again, it's the same things we talked about a moment ago. There's online, there's sales targets, there's customer feedback. This is where you really look back and try and understand exactly what it is that you've done in order to either be successful, or if maybe you only did 12% year over year. If you remember, my target was 15%, 12% year over year sales growth. Then it's time to check and see, maybe you had a stock out. It sold gangbuster faster than you expected for the first 2 weeks, and you weren't able to restock your major grocery store chain for another 2 weeks. Maybe that's the problem. And so going forward, you need to think about backfilling even more before you hit launch on a new product. That's the sort of evaluation you really need to be doing. And again, customer feedback. How did you hear about this new product? Oh, well, I saw it on your Facebook page. Thank you. That's nice of you to share. And we'll make sure that we continue to use those online services going forward to launch a new product. So that's it for the content. Again, this is a pretty snapshot view of what it is that goes into producing a marketing campaign. Again, this is a small finite piece of your marketing plan, just a small piece of the budget and a small piece of the effort throughout the whole year. But this is the increment that most folks tend to think about delivering their marketing, because you're not going to just market your brand every time, all the time. There's going to be smaller increments, again, of marketing that you're going to drive each time you deliver, or each time something new comes out, new products, new sweatshirts. These are the sorts of things that you're gonna use to drive a campaign. Set those smart goals and move forward each time.